It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. For those of you who are just chiming in, you are in for a treat. We are in the process of doing our nonprofit series. This is the first year we're doing our nonprofit series to highlight leaders in the nonprofit space. The holidays for me have always been a time to give and receive. And I have looked at the opportunity of having Her Success Story, as well as our LinkedIn Live show, Slater Success Live, as an opportunity to share forward of ways that we can give forward of ourselves. Giving is not always about money. Sometimes it's giving in a variety of different ways. And this is the first year, and yes, you could tell how excited I am that we are highlighting more leaders than ever before by being able to highlight them on Her Success Story, as well as Slater Success Live. So today I have the founder of the Miracle Foundation, Carolyn Boudreaux. And Carolyn is the founder of the Miracle Foundation, a top-rated nonprofit empowering orphans and vulnerable children to reach their full potential. Okay, guys, you're going to need to take some tissues out. She is also the leader in the movement to reunite children with their families, a revolution that is growing nationwide. Her latest initiative is Foster Share, is a phone and desktop app that prevents foster children bouncing from home to home, decreases the dropout rate of foster parents, and brings greater stability to the foster care ecosystem. Carolyn, I adore you, I admire you, and I am so thankful for you to sharing this with us today.
Thanks, Ivy. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So share a little bit, how this whole mission got started, how you got started in this. You're a founder of it. So I'm not going to, usually I ask about, well, tell us a little bit about your background and then tell us about the organization's background. You are the organization's background.
Yeah, so I used to be in television. I worked in a small television station in Austin, Texas, and it was very corporate world. It started off as an entrepreneurial venture, but we sold a couple of times, and it just got more and more corporate. And one night, my best friend and I were having drinks after work, and we just cooked up this plan to quit our jobs, sell off our stock, and take a trip around the world for a year. So
wow.
So we went back to her house. We stopped and got a bottle of wine, went back to her house, spread this world map on the floor, and started picking the countries we would want to go see if we could take this 1 year off for a year. And so she wanted to go to India because she'd been sponsoring a little boy, and she had his picture. And I just thought, oh my God, Chris, that kid isn't real. They give everybody the same picture. What they saw you coming a mile away. I'm making fun of her about it the whole time. And she's like,
I have to say, I would do the same. Like, really? You bought into that? Come on.
I mean, come on. So we did it. We quit our jobs. We planned this trip around the world for a year. We started our trip in January of 2000, started in Cape Town, South Africa, worked our way up Africa, got to India in May, and went to a village where this little boy lived and got paraded through this village. And at the end of the parade was this little boy standing there holding the first picture she had ever sent.
Wow.
We were shocked. I was shocked that it was real.
I'm sure you were a lot more shocked than she were. She believed.
Totally. She believed. And we're in this like National Geographic. It was just amazing, this village we were in. And I was so honored to be around what I thought at the time were the poorest people on the planet. I thought, wow, this is the bottom of the pyramid. This is what I've been hearing about. I'm so glad to be here on the ground. It's a real honor to be there. And so we started doing volunteer work there. And then one day, the day that changed my life, changed everything, was Mother's Day of 2000. I got up early in the morning to call my mom for Mother's Day and wish her a happy Mother's Day, feeling very grateful, and went to the village to work there in the 119-degree heat all day. And then that night we went to a local's house for dinner and walked into this orphanage. And that is when I encountered the poorest people in the world. These little kids that don't have anybody to love them. Those are the poorest people in the world. And so,
and what a connection. You that morning you felt the love of your mom and that connection. And you knew, in your heart of hearts, when you see that these poor children, heartfelt, they don't have that love. They don't have that person in their lives to wake up and talk to.
And so many people in the world. And why is it like this? We could do so much better. And I knew at the minute I walked in the doors, I thought, we could do so much better. I could fix this place in a week. If, I don't understand why nobody is in love with these children. And so we had a dinner. We had a beautiful Hindu prayer service with them. We started playing with the kids. We were calling them Velcro babies because they were just attaching to us. And a little girl came and put her head on my knee, and I picked her up and started singing her the lullaby that my mother used to sing to me. And she fell asleep in my arms. And when I went to put her in her room, I found these wooden beds. And Ivy, when I put an orphan baby on a wooden bed on Mother's Day, I was just haunted from that moment on. I knew I had to do something. And so that was the very beginning of the Miracle Foundation. Called it the Miracle Foundation because they were miracles. The human potential that was there was just incredible. They were just little miracles. And if they just had a foundation, they could thrive.
So there's a lot of people out there who are moved by something. And, and no disrespect, we're all moved. I've been in situations that I've been moved myself. There's a select few that can actually then go and take the action to build a global foundation. So tell me about, that process and how, there was the concept, but then how did you build this?
I had help. Clearly had a lot of help. So first of all, I made a commitment. People had quit on them before. That's why they were in an orphanage in the first place. Maybe their mom or dad quit on them, or the system quit on them, or just somebody had quit on them. And I just made a commitment that I was not going to quit on them, that I was going to take a stand for them. And so I came back to the United States, and we have pivoted the organization several times. We started off as an international adoption agency. We never did one international adoption, even though we got all our licenses. It was just like a pretty corrupt system that wasn't going to help enough kids. Then we started supporting children in orphanages. So when I was in television, I would work with a lot of franchises, and I would see, I'd work with one person that owned 40 Taco Bells. And so I would get, I would do advertising with one person, but get 40 stores. And so that was the idea behind our franchise methodology. So we would go into existing orphanages and give them a model for how to run. This is how you do your accounting. This is how you do your food. This is how you do your education. This is how you do and we came up with this methodology that they could run because they were all running differently. They were all running ad hoc. So we had about 300 orphanages in our franchise at one time. And then we pivoted because we went to talk with the kids back in 2015. We went on a listening tour, started talking to the kids, and we realized that a lot of them had families and that they really wanted to live with their families. And if we could support their families the way we supported these orphanages, they could go home. And so that was another big pivot for us.
Yeah. And I know you're referring to it a pivot, but it's also what, that was for me when I talk, I think that is that aha moment that says, okay, we can make more of a difference in this structure and help the children this way. And I love that you called it your education tour, because in doing that, you truly did self-educate yourself. You saw what the current problems were and what the current potential solutions were. And when you meet the problem with the solution, that's where you hit gold.
Exactly. And no one wants a solution more than the people that have the problem. Nobody's going to come up with a better solution, and no one wants a solution more than the people that have the problem. And so that listening tour, that education tour, is still something we do to this day, because that's where the solutions come from, is the ground. And so the children said, I have a grandmother, and if she had a little help, she could raise me. And so we have emptied about 50% of those orphanages. We've emptied about 150 of those orphanages and gotten children back with their families. And that's what we do in the global space, in the orphanage space.
And so, let's hear about a little bit more about the foundation itself. So in the global space, so you're touching a variety of countries? How do you do this on a day-to-day basis? Like,
so you really got to have 4 things. You need to have policy in place that make happen what you want to happen. So what we want is we want a family for every child. And the reason we want a family for every child is because that is what the children want. That is where they thrive. They don't want the best orphanage in the whole world. They don't want a foster care system that works. They want a family. That's what they want. So that's the first thing is kind of this policy. So we've worked with the United Nations. We've worked with hundreds of countries to get a policy in place that says children have the right to live with their parents or relatives if possible. And we've been very successful in that. So the policy is in place, and that is the first thing you really need. One of the 4 things you need. The second thing you need is you need grassroots solutions that come from the ground. So the children deciding what they need, the women deciding what they need. So you need solutions that come from the ground. So we've really gotten great at that. And then you need a place to build out resources and tools. So we have a bunch of tools that make sure that children are safely and permanently placed, whether that's the United States or in India. And we share those tools with the other 156 organizations that work on the same thing. What we work on is a family for every child. And then the 4th thing you need, of course, is funding. You need funding to make sure that these solutions not only happen, but that they're evaluated and working. So it's awesome.
It's so interesting because you talk about funding, and I always say, people like, oh, so Ivy, I thought you were centered on business. Why do you do these series on nonprofits, and why are you so passionate about nonprofits? And I like to ask the question because I think it's important about education, of understanding the differentiators and the similarities between running a business and running a nonprofit.
Oh my gosh, I mean, the differences are incredible. For example, not to get too far in the weeds, we get dinged. One of the questions is how much of your money goes directly to the program? So the answer to that question is 86%, which means that we get dinged if we do marketing. Now, what corporate can operate without doing marketing? I ask you, and the other thing is we also get dinged for paying people salaries that match. So do we want to get somebody that really can run a huge organization and pay them what they are worth? Or do we want to just pay people pennies and continue to live with the problem? So the difference between the corporate, it's like we get dinged for what what any corporate would invest in: infrastructure, back end office, great staff, wonderful marketing. Nonprofits get dinged for doing any of that. It's really sad, in my opinion. I think if everybody wants us to run like a company, but we're not allowed to run like a company because everybody wants this amount of money going directly to the field. But what if you could take that marketing money and expand the number of children that you can help? Right. So yeah, I don't know if that's making sense, but if you want.
No, it does. It makes sense. And, very, very much, I see an enormous amount of similarities between a nonprofit and a business, because a nonprofit's responsibility is to gain results for whatever their endeavor is. Okay?
Yes,
now,
definitely.
in order to gain results, as in business, in order to get the results, you have to invest. And, I see the only difference is in business, the person who is giving the money is receiving the solution. In a nonprofit, the person who is giving the money is receiving the golden heart, and the solution is moving forward into the bigger sphere.
Yes,
so I see
exactly.
a lot of similarities there. And I agree, and especially with your background, and you talk about, yes, if you can get one owner of a Taco Bell that owns 40 franchises, and you get one client with amazing ROI, right?
Exactly. We work with
philosophy.
Exactly. We work with one order of nuns, and they have 600 orphanages around the world, and we help them. So yeah, that the corporate stuff definitely came forward. We're definitely run like a corporation in that we have KPIs, and we're measured, and we know how to measure. We know how to measure impact. We know how to measure results. But the nonprofit space is held to a different set of standards that really make it difficult to grow and pay people pay the kind of people you want on staff to do this job, because these are complicated things. You can't pay a 22-year-old out of college to figure this stuff out. This is complicated. We're talking about children and families, foster care system. That's not something for a 20-year-old. That's something for somebody that has some experience in the corporate world or has some experience in the world. Yeah. So I see that as a difference. And then I will tell you that what we're seeing is that corporates are desperate for meaning and purpose. People that work in corporates are really looking for nonprofits to stand alongside and support. The younger generation will not work for a nonprofit that's all about the profit. I mean, a for-profit that's all about the profit. They're just not going to do it anymore. Heed my warning, corporates out there that aren't doing anything with purpose or meaning. You're going to lose your staff if you don't supply them with something powerful and meaningful to do.
So when you do your fundraising, are you aligning with various corporations, helping them find and connect to different missions, and helping their staff and employees then connect to the Miracle Foundation?
Yes. Now it's always a person. So a corporation is never a corporation. It's always that guy that owns the corporation or that gal that owns the corporation that really wants to bring purpose and meaning to their employees and their work. So while we definitely work with Dell and Tito's Vodka, and we have some great partners, UBS Bank, we have some great partners, but really at the end of the day, there's always a human being behind that corporation saying, I really care about children. And I think that's a beautiful and important investment.
So what are some of the, I'm the person who always brings up this time of year, goals and visions and strategic plans for next year. But if we looked at the Miracle Foundation and where you saw it moving forward, what are some of the visions? Where are you going next? What's next?
Our vision is a family for every child and the end of institutionalized care by 2040. So by 2040, we will not have any children living in institutions anymore at all, anywhere in the world. If they are, for some reason, put in a shelter, it's less than 90 days. So that this institutional living, which is so damaging to them, ask any kid who's been in the system how damaging the system is. So the mission is a family for every child in our lifetime, which means that right now, Miracle Foundation is reuniting children that are separated from their families back with their families. So even in the U.S. foster care system, kids are taken away from their families for one reason or another, but there's some aunt, grandmother, cousin, somebody relative that can take care of them, that the children look like, they smell like, they sound like, they have the same sense of humor as, and that kinship care is a very powerful thing. So getting every child into a family by 2040 is the goal. No institutions and foster care and systems that work.
So Carolyn, for our listeners today, can you share a little bit of how people can connect and learn more about the Miracle Foundation, connect to you? You're a speaker, you're a mover, you're a shaker, and you're a woman who gets things done.
Thanks. Yeah. So one more thing I'd love to say about that is one of the things that makes us so unique is that we have partnered with 156 other nonprofit organizations that are working in this space, and we all share that mission of a family for every child. So there is an end game here. We are all trying to go out of business by 2040. We're not trying to stay in business, we're trying to go out of business. That is a great model that people should be excited about. Nonprofits should try to go out of business. So Miracle Foundation and a big group of other organizations that work in this space are trying to make sure we don't have to do this work anymore. So that's number one. Number two, if we thought about our health the way we think about our philanthropy, we would all be very ill. Philanthropy should happen monthly. If you're donating to an organization or you have a passion around an issue, I want to encourage you to donate monthly. It says something about who you are. Who are you being to yourself? Who are you being to the world? Are we really going to just not, I call them OPCs. Are we really just going to let other people's children suffer? Or are we going to take responsibility? So my invitation is to take some responsibility, that ability to respond to kids that are not yours, but are really going to be able to affect your life in the future if we do the right thing for them now. So monthly giving is critical. We call that heartbeat contributions because it happens on a rhythm. Every month, think about what you can do and make a commitment. And then tell your organization what that is, because that's the other thing about this nonprofit space. It's very difficult to budget. 40% of donations often come in the month of December. I mean, that is no way to run a business. Monthly donations.
Right, exactly. I was just, you took the thoughts right out of my mouth. That is no way to run a business.
No way to run a business. Yeah. That monthly contribution is our bread and butter. So that's what I ask people to do.
I love it. I love it. Carolyn, thank you for joining me here today at Her Success Story. And just share the website one more time. And listeners, you can find it all in the show notes.
Yeah, it's miraclefoundation.org.
Fabulous. Listeners, what I say at this point in the show is this is in your hands. Take a moment and digest what you took away from listening to Carolyn and I's conversation today. And then what are you going to do about it? Feel free to put your takeaways, your ahas in the notes below, and your commitments to action. By putting things out there, that's how we start changing the world, one little commitment at a time. Thank you for joining me here today. Hit subscribe. We come into your inbox every Monday morning with great new episodes and fabulous nonprofit leaders. If this made an impact for you, make sure you share that forward and check out the other nonprofits in